The sun was barely up, painting the Texas horizon in streaks of pink and gold, when I heard the crunch of gravel under tires that didn't belong. My ranch, a sprawling 200 acres of dust and dreams, had been my sanctuary for a decade. It was my fortress, my escape from a world that chewed up good people and spat them out. But that morning, as I sipped black coffee on my porch, the air carried a sour note like trouble brewing with the dawn. A sleek black SUV rolled up my drive, kicking up dirt like it owned the place. Two figures stepped out, clipboards in hand, their cheap suits screaming self-important. Karen and her sidekick, probably a Kevin, with their HOA badges glinting like they thought they were the law. My gut twisted. This was no HOA land. This was my land. I set my mug down, the ceramic clinking against the weathered wood of the porch table. My boots hit the ground hard as I strode toward them, the dry grass crunching underfoot. "Can I help you?" I called, voice low but sharp, like a blade hidden in velvet. Karen blonde bob, lips pursed like she'd just sucked a lemon, didn't even look up from her clipboard. "Mr. Callahan," she said, her tone dripping with that fake authority people use when they think they've got you cornered. "We're with the Pine Creek Homeowners Association. We've received complaints about your livestock." She glanced at my herd grazing in the distance, her nose wrinkling like she'd smelled something foul. "This is a violation of community standards." I laughed, a short, barking sound that made her flinch. "Lady, you're lost. This ain't Pine Creek. This is private property. My property. No HOA. No rules. No complaints." I pointed to the rusted sign at the edge of my drive. "Callahan Ranch trespassers will be dealt with." Her eyes flicked to it, then back to me, narrowing. "We have jurisdiction," she snapped, waving a piece of paper like it was a royal decree. Her partner, a wiry guy with a mustache that looked like it was trying to escape his face, nodded like a bobblehead. "You'll need to remove those animals or face fines," he chimed in, his voice high and nasally. I felt my jaw tighten, the kind of slow burn that makes your blood hum. Jurisdiction. On my land. I'd spent years building this place, every fence post driven by my hands, every calf birthed under my watch. This wasn't just dirt. It was my life. And here was Karen, strutting like she could rewrite my story with her clipboard. I leaned in, close enough to smell her floral perfume, cloying and fake. "You're trespassing," I said, each word deliberate. "Leave. Now." She didn't budge. Instead, she smirked, the kind of smirk that says she's used to getting her way. "We'll be back with enforcement," she said, turning on her heel. Her partner scurried after her, but not before snapping a photo of my herd with his phone. The SUV peeled out, leaving a cloud of dust that stung my eyes. I stood there, fists clenched, the morning's peace shattered like glass. Inside, I paced the kitchen, the linoleum cool under my socks. The smell of coffee still lingered, but it couldn't calm the storm in my chest. I dealt with busybodies before, neighbors who didn't like my late-night bonfires, city folks who thought my roosters were noise pollution. But this was different. These weren't neighbors. These were strangers, claiming power they didn't have. I grabbed my phone and called the only person I trusted to make sense of this. Maria. Maria was my foreman's sister, a lawyer who'd traded city life for a small practice in town. She answered on the second ring, her voice warm but sharp, like she was already braced for bad news. "Jake, what's wrong?" I told her everything, the SUV, the badges, Karen's smug face. She sighed, long and heavy, the sound crackling through the line. "Sounds like a scam," she said. "Fake HOAs have been popping up, preying on rural folks. They fake documents, slap you with fines, and if you don't pay, they escalate. I'll look into it, but you need to secure your property. And Jake, don't do anything stupid." I hung up, her warning ringing in my ears. Stupid wasn't my style. But I wasn't about to let these vultures walk all over me. I spent the day checking my fences. The barbed wire taut and unyielding. The cattle lowed softly in the distance, their breath steaming in the cool evening air. I loved those animals, each one a piece of my soul. Their heavy steps a rhythm I'd built my life around. No one was taking them from me. The next morning, they were back. Same SUV, same clipboards. But this time, Karen had a third person in tow, a burly guy in a cheap security uniform. His belt jingling with keys and a fake badge. The sight of him made my stomach lurch, like I'd swallowed something rotten. They didn't knock or call out. They just marched across my field, their boots trampling the grass I'd spent years nurturing. Karen pointed at my cattle, barking orders like she was directing a movie. "Those need to go," she shouted, her voice shrill enough to spook a calf. The security guy nodded, pulling out a roll of yellow tape, like he was about to cordon off my life. I saw red. My heart pounded, a drumbeat in my chest. And before I knew it, I was moving. I didn't grab a gun or a bat, too predictable. Instead, I headed for the barn, my boots kicking up dirt, the smell of hay and leather filling my lungs. Inside, my cattle dog, Rusty, perked up, his ears twitching. "Let's give him a show, boy," I muttered. I swung open the gate to the main pasture, where my herd of 50 Angus cattle was grazing. With a sharp whistle, I sent Rusty running, his barks echoing like a battle cry. The herd stirred, hooves thundering as they surged forward. A black tide of muscle and instinct. I didn't aim them at Karen's crew, that would have been too far, even for me, but I let them spill across the field, their bellows drowning out her shrieks. Karen's face went white as the cattle stormed past, close enough for her to feel the heat of their breath. Her partner dropped his clipboard, scrambling back to the SUV. The security guy froze, his hand on his fake badge, like it could protect him from 2 tons of beef. "You're insane," Karen screamed, her voice cracking as she stumbled backward, her heels sinking into the dirt. "You'll pay for this." I leaned against the fence, arms crossed, the wind carrying the earthy scent of the herd. "You're on my land," I said, my voice steady but cold. "You don't get to make threats here." Rusty circled back, panting, his tongue lolling out like he was grinning. For a moment, I thought they'd run. But Karen, stubborn as a mule, planted her feet and started dialing her phone, her fingers shaking. "I'm calling the authorities," she spat. I smirked. "Good. Let's see what the real law thinks of you." The sheriff arrived 20 minutes later, his cruiser kicking up dust as he pulled up. Sheriff Daniels was a grizzled man, his face weathered like old leather, but his eyes were sharp, missing nothing. I'd known him since I was a kid, been the one to pull me out of a bar fight or two in my wilder days. He stepped out, hat tipped back, and took one look at the scene, Karen waving her clipboard, her crew cowering by the SUV, and my cattle still milling around, snorting and stomping. "Jake," he said, his voice a low drawl, "what's this mess?" I told him everything, my words clipped but honest. Maria had texted me earlier. She dug up dirt on Pine Creek HOA. It didn't exist. The papers Karen clutched were fakes, their jurisdiction a lie. They'd been scamming ranchers across 3 counties, banking on fear and forged documents. Daniels listened, his jaw tightening as I spoke. When I finished, he turned to Karen, who was still ranting about violations and fines. "Ma'am," he said, cutting her off, "I'm gonna need to see those papers." Her face froze, the color draining from her cheeks. She handed them over, her hands trembling. Daniels skimmed the pages, his lips pressing into a thin line. "These are forged," he said, his voice like gravel. "And you're trespassing on private property. Care to explain?" Karen stammered, her confidence crumbling like dry clay. Her partner tried to bolt, but Daniel's deputy was already there. Hand on his holster. The security guy, smarter than he looked, raised his hands and stayed quiet. I watched, my heart still racing, as Daniels cuffed them one by one, their protests fading into the wind. The cattle lowed softly, as if they knew justice had been served. As the cruiser pulled away, Karen's glare met mine through the window. I didn't flinch. This was my land, my life, and no one, not her. Not her fake badges, could take that from me. Daniels clapped a hand on my shoulder. You did good, Jake. But next time, maybe don't unleash the herd. He chuckled, the sound warm and rough, like a fire crackling. I nodded, the tension in my chest easing. The sun was high now, the air thick with the scent of grass and freedom. I looked out at my ranch, at the cattle grazing under an endless sky, and felt something settle in my soul. This was my fight, my victory, and no one would ever trespass on my home again.